An exclusive interview of how hospitals in Wuhan, China are allegedly discharging patients who haven't fully recovered, as the coronavirus outbreak seems to be stabilizing on paper. And Hubei province is facing a shortage of rice despite reports saying otherwise, raising fears of resident survival amid the coronavirus outbreak. A Chinese official saying the outbreak could strangle the country's economy if the disease cannot be controlled by the end of this month. In South Korea, a super-spreading event sparks fear after an entire city is told to stay inside in self-quarantine. And 2 deaths have been reported aboard the Princess Diamond cruise ship quarantined in Japan, raising concern of the virus spreading globally.
Welcome to China in Focus. I'm your host, Tiffany Meyer. Chinese authorities published their latest figures amid the coronavirus outbreak, again arousing confusion. Reports of 349 new confirmed cases in Hubei province on Wednesday, including 615 in the provincial capital of Wuhan. Netizens wondered why Wuhan has more cases than all of Hubei, since Wuhan is the capital of Hubei province and that number should be included and not separate. Later, Chinese state-controlled media People's Daily explained how this figure came about, saying it was because the authorities revised the diagnosis criteria for confirmed cases again, and some figures needed to be cut after examination. So now suddenly people who were categorized as infected the day before suddenly weren't classified that way anymore. But netizens are wondering what happened to those people. Do they still carry the virus, or did they all suddenly become cured? The situation in Wuhan has been out of control for weeks. On Thursday, Chinese authorities finally admitted this is an unprecedented challenge. A spokesperson from the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China held a press conference, saying the, quote, sudden arrival of the novel coronavirus epidemic is an abnormal battle for China since the regime's beginning. He added the ferociousness of the virus, the quick spread of the epidemic, how far it has spread, and the huge challenge of facing it are all unprecedented. Wuhan, the epicenter of the coronavirus outbreak, has been put on lockdown for about 1 month. No transportation, including cars, trains, planes, or ferries, are allowed to leave, except for special reasons, such as transportation of medication or other necessities for living. But many people still manage to leave this city. According to internal documents acquired by the Chinese edition of the Epoch Times, the roaming data from mobile phones show from February 1st to the 15th, about 140,000 people left Wuhan. More than 2/3 left Hubei province, while others remained. People are escaping from the epicenter to survive, but at the same time, they may bring the virus to other places. And the city on lockdown and the province on lockdown. Is there enough food for the people? On February 1st, local media Hubei Daily reported that the rice storage containers in Hubei could allow all the people in Hubei province to survive for about a year. About half a month later, just last week, Chinese media reported that a northern province of China urgently transferred 3,000 tons of rice to help Hubei. Many people started questioning, did the people in Hubei eat up all the grain reserve for 1 year in just over 10 days? Chinese authorities responded by saying it was a nice gesture from other provinces and that it does not indicate a shortage of grain in Hubei province. But many netizens aren't convinced and wonder if Hubei already has enough grain, why accept so much more? And the prices of vegetables in Wuhan are surging to 2 to 7 times higher than normal. For this, a Wuhan citizen paid 200 yuan. Average monthly income in Wuhan is only 7,000 to 8,000 yuan. And an exclusive interview from the Chinese NTD. Mr. Liao, a farmer in the Hubei province, told our reporter people are locked down at home with no income and no aid. People in the countryside plant vegetables themselves and can survive for a while, but people in the cities are miserable. Even healthy people could starve at home.
我们没分任何东西，或者是公安局的他们分来的么子暂缺过，你知道，公安局的非法东交代物资无法无天。现在这个形势是这样的，没办法，只有种就好了。家里养了鸡鸭多的了，他们现在许许多多人都没饲料了。因为我们家也因为提前买了一点点，我有5、6只鸡啊，芹菜啊，那个鸡它不是的，都不能出去买啊。你买到公安局的话，他走肯定是没收，也不能去到我们城区里，那也是个问题。 我没有这个病，但是他不让出去，我1个月都没出门了。我跟我儿子2个人在家里面就没有东西吃啊，专注的物资啊，我没有收到任何东西，好多话我不能说的，说了蒙就关了。
In the same city as Mr. Liao, a policeman's wife boasted that her husband got 4 boxes of fruit, a couple boxes of eggs, milk, and lots of vegetables from the police station. So much, in fact, that they could not consume it all.
我们老公派出的几十个表啊，这个学个4件事，然后他今年发了这么多餐，那餐好多他们凤凰派出发的，就学个4件事，我拿了3件事回去给我屋里人。
A netizen wrote, quote, "Even if people can't buy it anywhere, they can expropriate it from others' homes in the name of the government." According to reports from China, the number of newly infected coronavirus patients is slowing down, and more patients are starting to recover. And while, at least on paper, the situation appears to be stabilizing, residents and doctors in Wuhan tell a different story.
In China's official reports on the coronavirus outbreak, are the recovered patients they publicize really recovered? That is not the case for one Wuhan resident we spoke with. Her mom is infected. A hospital in Wuhan sent her mom home despite the fact that she is still terribly ill. Doctors insist that her mom has met the standard to be discharged. They've only provided her cough medicine.
很多人都是这种状况，然后出院了，然后包括还有人过了几天，出院几天就复发了，现在垂危，生命垂危。
She said even quarantine centers refuse to accept her mom because of her poor condition, so she can only stay at home.
你现在应收尽收你都收进去了，但是没有痊愈的人，你又把它放出来，他到底是有没有携带病毒吗？
A Chinese doctor's post that's been circulating online might explain why hospitals are so eager to discharge patients. In this later deleted post, a verified doctor on this medical forum in China wrote that hospitals are now under pressure from officials to increase their patients' turnover rates. They were asked to discharge patients within 10 days, as long as the patients' lives are not at risk. He said some patients were still on oxygen support and they could hardly walk, minutes before they were discharged as recovered patients. He also said that now political correctness is above everything, including patients' health and the public interest. The doctor said disease control in China now has walked on the path of a political movement. Penny Zhou, NTD News.
Many businesses in China could go bankrupt if the coronavirus outbreak cannot be controlled by the end of this month. That's according to a senior economic policy official in China.
In a recent economic forum, Chinese politician and economist Liu Shijin said the consequence of the virus outbreak could be dire for China's economy, especially if things can't calm down by the end of this month. He said the degree of impact on the economy depends on how long the outbreak lasts. If Chinese authorities had the disease under control by January, then only businesses in the service sector like restaurants, hospitality, and transportation would see the impact. But since the outbreak hasn't slowed, China is already seeing more industries start to suffer, including construction and agriculture. Liu said if the outbreak taps into March, it would hurt the bones and sinews of China's economy. Businesses won't be able to fulfill their contracts or pay employees' salaries. Their cash flow may not be sustainable, and many could go out of business. He suggested that the officials try to strike a balance between disease control measures and allowing business operations. Penny Zhou, NTD News.
South Korea reported a surge of 22 cases. A super spreader event sparked fear and emptied the streets of South Korea's 4th largest city as officials tell people to stay at home. By now, coronavirus infections almost doubled in South Korea, bringing the total to 104. Members of the church are asked to self-quarantine, and 90 of them are showing symptoms.
South Korea on Thursday reported the country's first death and 22 new coronavirus cases. Most of the cases are from Daegu, a city where an infected elderly woman attended church services. Health authorities described the services as super spreading events.
We are promptly investigating all people who came in contact with the confirmed patient, and we are planning to conduct effective measures such as investigating all the churchgoers to detect those with symptoms in their early stages.
The news worries residents in Seoul, some of whom are saying they want the government to respond with proper measures to contain the virus.
대처도 빨랐으면 좋겠고.
I hope response measures are carried out quickly. In the past, our government was late in responding to some situations, but I hope they show a more reliable side this time.
Daegu is a city of 2.5 million people. The infected person is a 61-year-old woman known as Patient 31. After the news broke, the local mayor said they are in an unprecedented crisis and asked residents to stay indoors to prevent further spread. The shopping malls and cinemas are deserted as people are holed up indoors.
2 more deaths from the coronavirus outside China today. They were passengers aboard the Diamond Princess cruise ship.
2 elderly passengers from the Diamond Princess cruise in Japan have died of the coronavirus. The deceased passengers were a man and a woman in their 80s. Professor Kentaro Iwata, an infection control specialist at Kobe University Hospital, criticized Japan's handling of the virus outbreak on the cruise ship.
It turned out that the cruise ship was completely inadequate in terms of the infection control. There was no distinction between the green zone, which is free of infection, and the red zone, which is potentially contaminated by virus. There was no single professional infection control person inside the ship, and there was nobody in charge of infection prevention as a professional. The bureaucrats were in charge of everything.
Diamond Princess, which was carrying nearly 4,000 people, has been quarantined in Yokohama since February 3rd, but passengers were not confined to their rooms until February 5th. Japanese Health Minister Katsunobu Kato defended Tokyo's efforts in a report by NHK, saying, quote, "We have, to the extent possible, taken appropriate steps to prevent serious cases." Yet even as the first passengers disembarked on Wednesday, Japanese authorities announced 79 new cases were discovered on board. A second group of about 600 Japanese and foreign passengers are set to disembark on Thursday after spending 2 weeks quarantined on board. Countries like Australia and the United States have begun evacuating their citizens, with plans to quarantine them again upon return.
In light of the coronavirus outbreak, the College Board, which administers the Scholastic Assessment Test, or SAT, has canceled the upcoming exam for all registered students in China. This includes those who plan to travel from China to testing locations in other countries.
The College Board said the March 14th exam cancellation was due to concerns about spreading the Wuhan coronavirus, now known as COVID-19. Registered students affected by the decision will receive a refund and can reschedule for a future test date, the spokesperson said. Many Chinese students travel to nearby Asian countries to take the SAT. Popular destinations include Hong Kong, Thailand, and Singapore, all of which have reported cases of the coronavirus. Other major U.S. college entrance exams, the American College Testing, or ACT, and the Secondary School Admission Test, known as SSAT, have also been canceled over virus concerns. Both exams were originally scheduled to take place in February in China and Hong Kong. Meanwhile, some students in China enrolled at American universities have found themselves unable to return to their U.S. schools for the spring semester because of recent travel restrictions. On February 2nd, the Department of Health and Human Services announced that foreign nationals who have been in China within the past 14 days would be banned from entering the United States.
Ukrainian villagers have taken to the streets in protest of evacuees coming from China. Their government says it's checked twice and found no infections.
Here in a village in Ukraine, dozens of protesters are linking arms to form a large human blockade. Opposite them are Ukraine's law enforcement, who came with the purpose of maintaining order. The protest is meant to stop a group of evacuees from reaching a sanatorium, where they are due to be held in quarantine. Protesters express concern about the danger of China's epidemic spreading to Ukraine.
Isn't there any place in Ukraine that can host 50 people that is located in more or less remote villages or in faraway areas where there is no threat to the population?
The evacuees, numbering 73 in total, came from China's Hubei province, which is where the outbreak of the coronavirus, or COVID-19, occurred. The Ukrainian government said it took measures to ensure the evacuees were not infected before coming to Ukraine.
The authorities have done everything possible to bring our people back. Moreover, they have already been checked twice for the coronavirus.
Criticism on the attitude protesters have towards the evacuees has also been made.
In other parts of our country, people are worried that our people return. In my opinion, we cannot treat our people this way.
The evacuees consisted of 45 Ukrainians as well as citizens from South America and Central Asia. Ukraine has no confirmed cases of the virus.
A U.S. Defense Secretary says China is engaging in steady state competition with the U.S. This means China's economic and military projections are challenging the U.S. on a global scale without an armed or violent conflict. The Defense Secretary says China's leader is telling his army to concentrate on making preparations for war.
Thank you for being here.
While discussing China's military projections, a U.S. Secretary of Defense on China suggested the Department of Defense should reorient its strategic competition with China. A specialist on U.S.-Asia issues pointed out China's military and economic operations, which present a challenge for the U.S.
You talked at some length about and responded in questions to the steady state competition that we're in. And using your own term, I'd like to foot stomp this as well. I think the challenge is a daily one. It's urgent, it's multidimensional.
The Defense Secretary said the U.S. must not wait and try to be prepared for a violent conflict with China, but must be aware that the conflict has already started as a result of China's peacetime preparations for war.
What Xi Jinping has told to his own PLA, which is to concentrate on preparations for war, which is steady state, preparations, right? Setting conditions, being prepared so that if the time comes, is that he can employ them as needed.
The U.S.-China Security Review Commissioner noted the U.S. needs allies in order to confront China diplomatically and politically.
There are 5 major allies in the Pacific: Japan, Korea, Australia, Thailand, and the Philippines, all have as their number one trading partner China.
The Defense Secretary said while U.S. alliances with countries in the Indo-Pacific are robust, using Chinese technology may present a security risk.
We have to be very clear-eyed that these countries are becoming under increasing pressure from multiple different lanes: diplomatic and economic pressure, political coercion.
Another commissioner pointed out China doesn't have a long history of allied relationships with meaningful countries that the U.S. has.
I mean, their allied relationship seems to be more driven by coercion and fear than by common interest.
But the Defense Secretary said China rejects alliance systems. He explained that instead, it adopts strategic partnerships while quadrupling its Marine Corps and developing long-range tools like
long-range air forces and other kind of ballistic missiles and hypersonic missile, long-range missile capacities, and then certainly cyber and space capacities, which are not dependent upon any sovereign issues at times.
According to the Defense Secretary, China's ability to support infrastructure projects like One Belt, One Road creates competition for the U.S. outside of a hot warfare scenario.
Here at China in Focus, we bring you first-hand information from inside China. Don't forget to subscribe for the latest updates.